The Legend of Zelda is one of Nintendo's most popular franchises, and though there are a lot of games, two of the most popular came out on the Nintendo 64. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are not only looked at as two of the best games in the entire franchise, but also two of the greatest video games ever made. But today, we're gonna figure out which one's best. Ocarina of Time was the first Zelda game to make the jump into 3D, and it is looked at as one of the best early 3D games, right alongside titans like Super Mario 64. With this being a Legend of Zelda game, you play as Link, who is asleep in his room having nightmares about an evil man on horseback.
Foreshadowing! You irritate me to a level I did not think was possible.
A giant sentient tree known as the Great Deku Tree also senses this impending evil and sends Navi, a fairy, off to retrieve Link. The two then go on a quick quest to find a sword and shield and eventually make their way to the tree, who informs Link that he is needed to go on a great journey. The first step of which being entering the tree and destroying a curse that lies inside. And Link does just that, but it ends up being a little bit too late and the Great Deku Tree dies. But just before that, he entrusts Link with the Kokiri's Emerald, a magical green stone that he tells Link to bring to Princess Zelda in Hyrule Castle. So Link, being the good guy he is, sets out to do just that. And he begins his journey through Hyrule Field, the Hyrule Castle, and after sneaking past some guards who all need to be fired, ends up in a courtyard with Princess Zelda, who almost instantly begins to trust him.
Alright, Princess, let me show you what you gotta do. First off, you gotta go, and then you gotta say, help!
Link and Zelda have a conversation about the Sacred Realm, and how three goddesses hid the power of the Triforce somewhere in Hyrule, a powerful relic that can grant the wish of someone who holds it in their hand. And the prophecy states that if someone with a good heart has their wish granted, then Hyrule will enter a golden age. But if an evil person gets it, then the world will be consumed by darkness. So in order to protect the Triforce, some sages built the Temple of Time. But the temple is sealed, and in order to enter it, Link would need to collect the 3 spiritual stones. And then Link and Zelda have a brief conversation about Ganon, and though how currently he has pledged his allegiance to the Kingdom of Hyrule, Zelda has also been having the same dreams as Link about the fall of Hyrule, and she believes that Ganondorf is the one who is going to destroy the world. Zelda then sends Link on a quest to find the other 2 spiritual stones, one being hidden on Death Mountain with the Gorons, and the other being in the domain of the Zora. And after Link painstakingly collects the other 2 stones, he returns to Hyrule Castle to see that his nightmare is finally unfolding, with Princess Zelda and her guardian Impa fleeing on horseback from Ganondorf, who proceeds to hit Link with a Ki Blast and then chase after Zelda. But during her escape, Zelda ended up tossing the final tool that Link needed, the Ocarina of Time. And using the stones he collected and the ocarina, ends up opening the Temple of Time, where he collects an ancient sword known as the Master Sword. And after pulling the sword from the pedestal, Link awakens in the Chamber of Sages, where he is greeted by Rauru, one of the sages, who informs him that a lot of time has passed since he pulled that sword, with Link having aged 7 years and all of Hyrule falling apart in that time. Because when Link pulled the Master Sword from the stone, he was too young to take on the responsibilities of the Hero of Time. So Rauru informs Link of his next task, awakening all of the remaining sages, so they can assist Link with sealing the evil that Ganondorf has released. Even as a child, I always thought it was a little weird that immediately following his coma, he gets sent on another quest.
Hey, sorry to wake you up from your nap, but the world is ending! Let's go!
To find the remaining sages, there are 5 more temples that Link needs to complete, with each of them containing a sage. And when Link returns to the world of Hyrule, he is greeted by a mysterious ninja known as Sheik, who he will run into from time to time for tidbits of prophetic wisdom and music lessons for his ocarina. But during the 7 years that had passed during Ganon's reign, the entirety of Hyrule has changed. And by changed, I mean everything has gotten substantially worse. And once you're done traveling across the land saving the sages, you return to Hyrule Castle in order to end things once and for all. And once you get there, you encounter Sheik, who turns out to be Princess Zelda in disguise.
Wow, I never would have known. What a surprise.
Zelda goes on to explain how the Triforce really works, being split across 3 people, with Ganon having the Triforce of Power, Zelda having the Triforce of Wisdom, and Link having the Triforce of Courage. Zelda then explains the plan to seal away Ganondorf and gives Link access to the light arrows, and immediately following that gets captured by Ganondorf, where Link then sets off on his final quest to fight Ganondorf and save Zelda. with a climactic final battle that starts off with a game of tennis and ends with Link fighting this abomination known as Ganon. That ends with an iconic moment of Link stabbing Ganon in the face, and the sages working together to seal Ganon away for good.
And we never saw him again. Never again!
And in the end, Zelda uses the Ocarina of Time to send Link back to when he was a child, and the day is saved. Ocarina of Time story gets a lot of flack for being simple and being very similar to another Zelda game that came before it, A Link to the Past. And though there are definitely some similarities between the two, I don't think Ocarina of Time's greatest strength is its story. It is still great and touches on incredible themes, but Ocarina's legacy more so comes for what it did for gaming as a whole. Ocarina of Time not only managed to take the Zelda formula from 2D to 3D perfectly, but also redefined how 3D adventure games would be made going forward. Most notably from the creation of the Z targeting system. At the very beginning of the game, Link is introduced to Navi, a fairy that joins him on his adventure and helps him out by giving him advice, arguably too often, but more importantly functions as this game's lock-on system. When you lock onto an enemy, Navi will fly around them. And not only does this make the combat good, it also makes it possible at all, making it so you can actually focus on the target you're trying to fight, so you're not just swinging your sword around aimlessly. And though this was the first time that Link had been brought into 3D, the controls feel like he had been there for a while. And they do a beautiful job setting up Hyrule to feel more alive than ever. You begin your journey as the only child who doesn't have a fairy, and the Kokiri Forest segment serves as the perfect tutorial to get you familiar with how the game works. And having the tutorial segment end with the first dungeon being the Great Deku Tree was the perfect way to throw you into this world to see what you were getting into. It was the perfect beginning dungeon to get you used to how the game is going to work, introducing some simple puzzles that require critical thinking, like using a Deku Stick to burn cobwebs. And like most dungeons in every Zelda game ever, it gave you your first unique item being the slingshot. And it is definitely a slingshot, and the gameplay loop for all of the dungeons works pretty much the same way. Enter the dungeon, figure out the gimmick, and get an item that'll allow you to solve puzzles, which you can then take with you to use outside of the dungeons and on the rest of your adventure. Which is not only fun to be able to use all of these new tools when you get them, but it gives you a reason to go back to areas you've already explored to uncover things you might have missed. But one of Ocarina of Time's biggest strengths is how the storytelling affects the gameplay. For the first 3 dungeons, Link is a child, and being so young means that Link is unable to do some things that would be really helpful, like lifting the Hylian shield off his back so he doesn't have to block like he's a turtle. But the first 3 dungeons are pretty straightforward, and then when the time skip happens, everything starts to get a lot more complicated, which is good because it adds a layer of difficulty and because it makes sense narratively. The reason that 7 years had to pass so Link was able to continue his journey was because he was not able to take on the responsibilities as a child. So it only makes sense for the remaining dungeons to be slightly more difficult. And they did a great job scaling up the difficulty of these dungeons by introducing things like small keys to make it feel like Link's new journey had more stakes than ever. And all 9 of the main dungeons that you explore are memorable in some way, shape, or form. And I like a lot of these dungeons a lot, but I wouldn't say that any of them stick out to be one of the best in the series. But of course, there is one infamous temple in this game that a lot of people hate a lot, and that is the Water Temple.
I don't hate this as much as most people. Someone drown him!
I will admit that especially on the N64, the Water Temple is very annoying. Most of the dungeons have some sort of gimmick that you rely on to solve a puzzle. And in the Water Temple, that is using iron boots to sink to the bottom so you can walk around the area to flip switches and change the level of the water. Which as an idea sounds great, except for the fact that every time you want to take off these boots, you have to pause the game and take them off. Which means that you are starting and stopping every 30 seconds for a majority of this dungeon, which gets really annoying really fast, especially because this dungeon is full of clams that are really annoying to kill because your only attack is using the hook shot. That aside though, except for this being annoying, I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people say, especially when you play on the 3DS where a lot of these issues have been fixed. And the other dungeons like the Forest and the Fire Temple are very solid, offering a great variety in the enemies and puzzles, so much so that even after playing this 10 plus times, I still want to come back and experience this game again and again. But outside of the main quests in the dungeons, there's still a lot to do in the game for people who want to experience it all. Throughout the land of Hyrule, there are 100 hidden Skulltulas that you can encounter on your journey. And though I have beaten this game more times than I can count, I have only completed this once. After you get 50, you get a piece of a heart, which is really the best reward you can get, because the reward for all of them is unlimited rupees, which is nice, except that I don't really need rupees in this game ever. And there are loads of other mini games scattered throughout the world that give you different prizes for completing them, and most of them are pretty good, except for the fishing, which I hate with every fiber of my being. This man is running a scheme, I know it. But going from A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening to Ocarina of Time was a groundbreaking step for the series going forward. I will never forget the feeling of stepping into Hyrule Field for the first time as a kid and experiencing what a true open world felt like for the first time. And though by today's standards, it's definitely a little bland for a hub world, this was a lot of people's first time experiencing what a 3D adventure could be like. And the N64 was the perfect console for this adventure to take place on. I just like this a little bit better. During the earliest bit of the 3DS's life, the console was not doing very well. It was originally overpriced and didn't have the best lineup of launch titles. But just a little while after the launch, we got Ocarina of Time 3D. A remake of the game fittingly for the 3DS. But they didn't just make the game playable in 3D, they also completely remade it, having the art style look a lot more similar to the promo art that was available at the time. And for the most part, I think this looks a lot better than it did on the N64. There are some things that are controversial about this, like the final battle with Ganon losing a lot of the cinematic value that it had, and the new additions like Sheikah Stones being added on the map, but overall, after replaying both versions, I'm still nostalgic for the N64, but I prefer the experience of playing it on the 3DS. But regardless of how you experience it, Ocarina of Time is a masterpiece of a game. There is not a lot to say that fans haven't already said over the last few decades. But less than 2 years after the release, we got a direct sequel, known as The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Ocarina of Time's edgy sibling that gave us a Zelda experience that we have never gotten since. The story begins a little while after the events of Ocarina of Time. Link is out riding Epona looking for Navi, when seemingly out of nowhere, Skull Kid appears wearing an ominous mask and jumps Link with the help of 2 fairies, stealing his ocarina and running away. Link chases him down but ends up falling into a very, very deep pit, and he awakens in a brand new world known as Termina. And after narrowly surviving his fall, he encounters Skull Kid one more time, who curses him to become a Deku Scrub.
You wanna know what he kinda looks like? If you say Bellsprout, I will smite you.
And before Skull Kid leaves Link to figure out how to navigate life in this new form, he also abandons one of his fairies known as Tattle, who decides to team up with Link in order to get back at Skull Kid for being the worst. After getting somewhat accustomed to his new form, Link then meets the happy mask salesman who makes a deal with him. He will turn Link back to his normal form if he can get both the ocarina back and the mask that Skull Kid stole. And he tells Link that he has a total of 3 days to get this done before he leaves. And from there, Link begins his journey, and when he steps foot into Termina for the first time, he sees why the mask salesman is about to leave. Because the moon is actively falling to the earth, and within 3 days' time will destroy all of the world. And that 3-day window will become very important throughout your entire journey. So over the next 3 days, Link has to go on a quest to get his ocarina back, and the only way to do that is to talk to the people of the town who want nothing to do with him because he's a Deku Scrub.
Hey, can you help me, please? Yeah, of course. What is wrong with your face?
By the time you figure out where to go and what to do, it's already too late. The moon is about to hit the ground, and the only thing you can do is play the Song of Time, which sends you back to the first day so you can start all over again. You then go back to the mask salesman, who shakes you violently for not getting his mask back, but still helps you change back to your normal form, sealing the Deku form into a mask. And after a little while, you learn more about this land, mainly the Protectors of Termina. 4 giants who unfortunately look like that, who used to be friends with Skull Kid but over time grew apart, which led to Skull Kid feeling like he was abandoned. So in turn, he started to act mischievous, which only drew them further apart, and inevitably it led to him stealing Majora's Mask. And from this point, it is now Link's job to navigate the world of Termina, getting the assistance of the Protectors and helping the people of Termina along the way. Majora's Mask has a story that is far different than any other Zelda game that we have ever seen. The first and one of the most major differences is that this doesn't take place in Hyrule. There's no Ganon or focus on the Triforce. It's just Link doing what he does best and saving the world. And if I'm being honest, I think that is one of this game's biggest strengths. Not so much at the time, but certainly after, most Zelda games take place in Hyrule. And though throughout all of its iterations, it has been very different every time you go there, it's stories like this that take Link into new locations, giving him a different set of tasks that feel refreshing. Especially because Termina is not like Hyrule. In Ocarina of Time, you start out and the world is more or less fine. And it's only after the 7-year time skip where you see how bad things truly get. But when you step foot into Termina for the first time, the world has already fallen apart. The world has been separated into 4 segments. The swamp has been poisoned, the mountain has been frozen over, the ocean is polluted, and the canyon is full of the dead. And all of the creatures that live in these areas are already suffering. And even though the moon is falling and the world is about to end, the people of Termina are just going about their lives. And though you only have 72 hours until the world ends, you get a majority of the story from the people you help on your journey. And though helping these people is mostly optional, it's what makes this experience even better. In reality, you only have to beat the 4 main sections of the game, getting the help from the giants, and then you can end the story. But no matter how many times I have beaten through Majora's Mask, whenever I play this, I end up trying to 100% it, doing every quest for every person so I can know their story. But once you've completed the 4 main dungeons, you call on the help of the 4 giants to stop the moon from crashing into the planet. You confront Skull Kid, but the mask completely leaves him behind, entering the moon so Link and Tattle have to go after him. But inside the moon is a grassy field with a large tree, and all around the hillside are kids running around with masks. You talk to each of the kids and fight through a mini dungeon, all for the last kid to be wearing Majora's Mask. During this time, Link gives up any mask he's received, and as long as you have collected all of the other masks, you are given the Fierce Deity Mask. Now this part is optional, you don't have to collect all of the masks, but I do every time I play because I like using this form. Link then battles and defeats Majora, and the moon gets sent away and the evil disappears. And Link has saved the day once again. Like I said before, Majora's Mask is very different to any other Zelda game we've gotten before or after. Termina is a new place, full of people who are similar from Ocarina of Time, but are also very different than they were in their original game. And the story is just as much about the human spirit as it is about saving the world. Though the people of Termina are aware the moon is going to crash into Earth in 3 days, they are still just going about their lives and trying to solve their problems. And due to the 3-day cycle and looming apocalypse, the characters feel more connected than ever before. Having a repeating 3-day cycle means that you learn these characters' routines inside and out. When you use the Song of Time to go back to the first day, everything that you have completed stays completed. You do lose things like arrows and items for quests you couldn't complete in time, but every time I reset the clock, I feel like I had made some progress in making the world a better place. And that is really what this game is all about. Partaking in the main quest brings you to 4 separate areas, each having their own temple. And though there are only 4 temples in the game, all of these are at base incredible. A lot of the gameplay feels very similar to how it did in Ocarina of Time, with dungeons requiring you to find an item inside that you use to solve puzzles. But the major gameplay change comes when you equip a mask. There are a ton of masks in the game, but the ones that I am going to talk about are the ones that you use the most. Of course, there's the Deku mask that you use in the very beginning that turns Link into a Deku scrub.
It's still so ugly.
This is the weakest of the forms, but still has a good amount of new abilities, like being able to skip on water, do a spin attack, and shoot bubbles. There's the Goron mask, which gives you the ability to punch really hard, pick up heavy objects, and roll around as a wheel of death like Sonic the Hedgehog. And arguably my favorite of the masks is the Zora mask, which makes Link turn into a Zora. In this form, he gets the ability to swim really fast, use hand-to-hand combat, and sink and swim at will, meaning you no longer have to go into a menu and take on and take off iron boots in order to navigate an underwater space. These masks diversify the gameplay in a way that no other 3D Zelda has ever done before. All of these forms are useful in their own way, and it makes exploring the world and solving puzzles so much more rewarding. And the best part about this is that Link is literally becoming the people he is trying to help. And outside of these, there are other masks that are extremely helpful, like the bunny hood, which makes you run at double speed, the stone mask that makes you invisible to enemies, and Garo's mask, which makes the Redeads do this, I don't know why this is the case, but I love it. And the masks make the gameplay so much more engaging, especially when it comes to the dungeons. The first of the 4 dungeons is the Woodfall Temple, a solid first dungeon that makes use of the Deku mask and is overall simple but engaging. There's the Snowhead Temple, where you make your way through a bunch of floors, punching out layers of a tower to get to the boss battle, but in order to get there, you have to use fire arrows and whip around as a Goron, which adds a good amount of strategy and planning to what could have been a very simple dungeon. And then there's the Great Bay Temple, another dungeon that a lot of people seem to really dislike, but I still don't think is that bad. This is like a Water Temple 2.0 without all of the annoying quirks that came with it, where instead of changing the water level to get through the temple, this time you are rerouting water through pipes. This is my least favorite temple in the game, but that doesn't mean it's bad, it's just that the other temples are so good. And though I can see why a lot of people would dislike this, especially on the 3DS, I still think it is very good. And the final dungeon being the Stone Tower Temple, where you use all of your masks in order to solve puzzles, and literally flipping the entire dungeon upside down in order to better navigate it. These dungeons are the definition of quality over quantity. Though there are substantially less than Ocarina of Time, they are phenomenal all the way through. And if you combine the 4 dungeons and all of the quests for characters you meet along your journey, then you don't really feel like you're missing much because there's always something to do. And though the console didn't have a ton of games, this is often looked at as one of the best N64 games of all time. And I just wish I could say the same for the remake on the 3DS. Now, I'm not going to say the 3DS version is substantially worse, because there are some things that I do like about it, but overall they ended up doing a lot more harm than good when it came to remaking this for the 3DS, when compared to what they did to Ocarina of Time. Of course, this retained all of the visual and UI changes that you saw in Ocarina of Time 3D, and if you have one of the new model 3DSs, you can use the C-stick to move the camera, something that will always feel weird to do, but is nice to have. And they added some upgrades that I overall do like the changes to the Bomber's Notebook, which is far more useful as far as content, and most importantly, the Song of Double Time, which allows you to skip to a specific hour of the day, so you no longer have to wait around for the clock to move if you're waiting for an NPC. But that's where the good things start to end and the cracks begin to show, because they changed a lot more with this remake than they did with Ocarina of Time, and a lot of the changes were not good. When you're using the Deku Scrub mask, Link is now slower when he's hopping on water, which makes him far more annoying to control than he used to be. They move some items and quest rewards around, which is more or less a neutral change. It's just annoying to have to relearn where things are, especially if you're used to the N64 version. But most importantly, they absolutely destroyed how nice it felt to swim when using the Zora mask.
I'm gonna find whoever changed this and poop their pants. What?
While in Zora form, your fast swimming is now linked to your magic meter. I can somewhat understand what they were going for here, trying to slow Link down so he doesn't move as fast and hard to navigate areas, but wearing the Zora mask, you could just walk underwater. So I don't really understand how this fixes anything except for my will to live switch being on. So even though it looks nicer and is far easier to play on the 3DS, I still think the better version of this is on the N64. But Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are 2 of my favorite Zelda games of all time, with both games touching on deep topics, like Ocarina talking about how life changes from childhood to adulthood, and Majora's Mask talking about the bonds and connections of the human spirit and how they continue even when faced with a certain end. And both games tackle deep themes of the human experience incredibly well. But if I had to pick which game is better, I would say it's Majora's Mask. I do recommend playing Ocarina of Time first and then experiencing Majora's Mask because that is the order it's supposed to be played, but whether it's the 3-day cycle, the ability to use the masks, or the overall atmosphere of the world, I think Majora's Mask is a slightly better package.